What would Mark say if he looked at this now?
In terms of the treehouse, or in terms of we're meeting here to talk about it?
Electricity. It's a lot different than. I mean, this was a very. This was his place.
Yeah. He, he'd like it a lot because now you can use it all the time, but the view is essentially the same. He'd come and there was a bench here and he'd have his coffee and he'd sort of look around, and so he'd be loving it. I mean, he'd probably be living up here and studying and doing whatever, so it'd become his man cave.
You're up here. When you're obviously up here a lot more now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
When you come up here, what is going on with you when you're up here?
Well, it's a time to get away, to be sure, but the forest in some ways is sort of timeless, and it's a way of seeing what he saw, and it's a way of connecting with him. We even
Do you talk to him? Do you talk to Mark?
Yeah, I do.
What do you say to him?
I ask him sometimes about more. I tell him I miss him, and sometimes I just kind of, I don't know, have a cry a little bit, talk to God and Mark. That really is what gets me through it, is because, as long as Mark's with God, everything's okay, because I'm connected to God spiritually, and Mark is with God, and so there's my connection, and that's really what gives me peace about where we're at. And so, as much as talking to Mark is just praying, just coming up here and praying and resting, if you will.
In the preface I read, Lee Allen wrote, "This will most likely be painful to read. It certainly is to write. But you need to know what happened that horrible, beautiful night to fully understand the importance of Mark's words." What did she mean by beautiful night?
Well, I think, in retrospect, as we look upon all the things that have happened, there's so much life that's come out of Mark's death. And we don't believe in tragedy. We don't believe in this is beyond God's plan. That doesn't mean it makes it easier. But in terms of when we see how much life has come from people being encouraged in their walk, of people coming to faith, of this book, in many ways, would it have come to pass without that? No. And so I think in a strange way, we've seen Christ come out in so many ways that we never would have seen. Don't get me wrong, we love him to be back here, but there is a beauty in seeing God's plan at work, and we've been able to see that happen in the last year.
At the time when I was doing my reporting, I said something along the lines of, I can never remember a story where there was more discussion about God and Jesus Christ than this story. That in this tragedy, seeds were planted.
Yeah. Well, Mark, if you look at his journal writings, and literally they're 5 years of journal writings, there was a consistent plea to God, which is, I want to know you better. And no matter what it takes, I want to know you better. And, in this book, we see the richness of a 12-year-old to 17-year-old growing in his intimacy. I mean, you'll even see where Mark writes to God and God writes back. And so I think the reason, I do believe this is not a wake-up call, but a message from God. I want you to know me. I want you to look at Mark and his relationship with me, and that you can have that too. And so Mark's life in some ways is like a beacon, that's blinking out there to anyone who's listening. Come and know God. And I think that's why it grabs so much traction, is because people, they want to know, why am I here? Who made me? What is I supposed to do with my life? And you're not going to find those answers in the world. You're not going to find them at your job. You're not going to find them in your relationship, in your money. You're only going to find it when you find the one who made you.
In the last year, how have you and your family survived this tragedy?
Yeah. Survive is a great word. There are mountains and valleys. We have the confidence and hope. We have the scriptures. We're very blessed to be able to look into Mark's life and to see how rich it was. But it's very poignant at times. I was getting ready to mail one of these books out, and I was in the post office yesterday, and the woman, she looked at the picture and she said, "Oh, is that you?" And I thought to myself, no, it's not, but he looks like me. And sort of it all came rushing back. This was somebody who was, who looked like me, the person who looked like me more in the world, and he's gone. And so at different times it just kind of comes rushing back. But I'll tell you, our family coming together and leaning on one another, praying together, seeing the hope in it, our Christian community praying for us, it's been a supernatural thing, because we could easily just sort of hang it all up and say it's over.
And allowed it to destroy you too?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the divorce rate for people who lose a child is like 90%. But my relationship with my wife is better than it's ever been. And I think that's one of those blessings that, we just said, God isn't going to give so much life to everyone else from this and not bring life to our family as well. And so when it's a difficult day, it seems like when Lee Ellen's down, I'm up. And when I'm down, Lee Ellen's up. And when the kids are down, we just kind of pull it together and maybe have dinner out on the treehouse. And we talk about Mark very openly, because we believe he's not dead. He's asleep, as the Bible would say. He's in heaven. His body's in the grave, but we're going to see him again.
And as you remember him, to say he's asleep, but he was so alive. He really was very alive at a very young age in his writings and his insight and his ability to connect with God, with Jesus Christ. And he was able to write about it so eloquently at a very young age. He was very alive.
Yeah. He was. And I think, the proof of life, I guess, is like it translated into how he loved people. If you really look at two themes of this book, I love this quote at the back. I don't want to be known as spiritual or religious or someone with awesome prayers, which we would think about this Christian kid. It says, I want to be known as someone who loves. And so his relationship and his desire to know God filled his heart with love, and it just flowed out. It flowed out to other people. So his life was full of life because he was connected with the one who is life.
How are his brothers and sisters?
We're all okay. Maria, the youngest, sometimes she'll just, kind of in a young way say, I miss Mark. In that sort of simple faith way, I miss Mark. And us having to reassure her and encourage her about the bigger picture, because it's tough for kids. Leal and I at least have more years under our belt. But I think this book is going to be and has been helpful for them getting a window into Mark's life and seeing, the beauty in it. But like us, it's up and down days, and some emotions you can't really quantify or even really understand. You just feel.